So I think you're onto something with the markets being a little smaller, but I mean the Niners do have their fair share of fans. I certainly run into them anywhere that like if I ever tell anybody, oh hey, I follow the Dallas Cowboys, immediately it tends to be a Niner fan or a Packer fan or a Giant fan, and they hate me.
Yeah.
So I run into them all the time. I think the really interesting storyline is Andy Reid trying to get his first championship. I mean, he went to the NFC title game in the early 2000s with McNabb and Terrell Owens at least 3 or 4 times, and he never got the job done. As a matter of fact, T.O. and Donovan McNabb were arguing with each other on Twitter, blaming each other basically for the reason that they, lost the Super Bowl. But if my memory serves me correctly, Steve, I remember T.O. playing with a very substantial injury and balling out. So I don't think it was anybody's fault. I just think they ran into a buzzsaw with New England. So.
And that's how I feel on the whole Andy Reid. And I felt like this way. I was driving back from Seattle last Sunday before that game, and I was listening to way too much sports radio, 6 hours of sports radio. And the whole thing was, can Andy Reid get to the Super Bowl? And if not, what's this do for his legacy and this and that? And that thing drives me nuts because, and even this one, if he loses this Super Bowl, Andy Reid can't win the big one. You get to enough conference championship games and Super Bowls, you tend to face pretty good teams, and sometimes you lose them. And sometimes the other team has the better team. And I don't know what the exact number is. I think he went to lost 3 conference championship games,
and then finally won one. And they lost to the Patriots. So
last year. So he's like lost 4 conference title games and 1 Super Bowl. And to me, I just don't put that as a big black mark on his resume that never won the Super Bowl and only got through one of the 5 conference title games he's been in. I just hate that stuff. I think I look at that and say, if he'd have lost last week, even to the Titans, or 2 weeks ago, and, people would have blown up because the Titans were, the Titans are the same team that you just knocked off the Ravens and that was the favorite, and the Patriots, who are the classic team. So if I just hate this thing with coaches that it's like, can't win the big one, can't do this. Sometimes you get yourself in that. I mean, he's gotten himself into 5 conference title games. And people want to look at that and say, well, what a failure that he's never won one. But to me, you look at it and say getting to 5 is a pretty good run and kind of shows what you can do as a coach.
Yeah, I think the Buffalo Bills in the 90s would say the same thing to you, Steve. I think the Vikings in the 70s would say the same thing. I think in order to even get to a Super Bowl, you have to have an amazing team. You have to have a really good coaching staff in place. You have to have a very firm foundation of what you do as a team. And I think sometimes in football, especially, you can run into a matchup that just isn't ideal, and you don't. That's why they say any given Sunday, you just ran into something that you weren't able to overcome, and on any given Sunday, you could lose to the Browns or the Jets. It happens.